deep dive. Today, we're tackling something I know is weighing on a lot of minds, maybe even yours. The growing public concern about artificial intelligence.
Yeah, definitely.
It's easy to feel a sense of unease when we hear about these rapidly advancing technologies. And this deep dive is really all about unpacking those anxieties. Our mission isn't to dismiss those feelings, right? But to move beyond the general worries and, really dig into what's fueling them and what a more informed perspective might look like.
Exactly. And to help us get a handle on this, we've gathered a range of material for you, things like surveys of public opinion, psychological studies, even historical accounts of how people have reacted to new tech in the past.
Right.
We want to provide, a comprehensive and balanced view to address that unease head on.
Okay, so let's start by unpacking some of the most common fears. Right up there for many is the worry about losing their jobs.
The big one.
Yeah, we all seen the headlines, and even someone like Elon Musk has suggested a future where, quote, no job is needed.
Yeah, that got a lot of attention.
And it's not just speculation. Surveys show a pretty significant portion of people are genuinely afraid of AI taking their jobs.
And it's interesting to look at how similar fears have played out historically. Think back to the Industrial Revolution. There were, widespread anxieties about machines replacing human workers.
The Luddites, for example.
Exactly. And one economic analysis in our sources highlights how the printing press dramatically lowered the cost of books. This led to a huge surge in literacy and entirely new industries around publishing education.
Right.
A powerful example of technology being, deflationary and creating unexpected opportunities. It wasn't the end of work, but like a transformation of it.
But historical lens is so important. Were there any particular anxieties from past technological shifts that our sources highlight as being strikingly similar to the fears we see around AI today? Because it feels like the AI conversation is broader now, right? Impacting not just manufacturing, but also white collar and even creative fields.
Oh, absolutely. The sources point to these recurring patterns. For instance, the introduction of the automobile, that sparked fears about safety and the displacement of horse-drawn carriage industries.
Sure, makes sense.
Similarly, with AI, we see anxieties about safety and the potential disruption of, all sorts of job sectors. What's fascinating is that while the specific jobs change, the underlying fear of technological displacement seems to be a kind of consistent human response.
Another big worry that keeps coming up is the idea of losing human control and autonomy.
Yeah, that's a deep one.
It's the concern that we'll become too dependent on AI, maybe stop thinking for ourselves, or that AI will start making crucial decisions, eroding our personal agency.
That's a really important point about our relationship with technology. Like, how much decision-making power are we really comfortable handing over? One perspective in our sources, a philosophical essay, explores the idea that our fear of losing control might stem from a really fundamental desire for self-determination.
That makes sense. It's almost a question of identity, isn't it? And for some, these fears escalate into more existential concerns. The idea that AI could ultimately pose a threat to humanity.
Right, the Skynet scenario.
Exactly. Science fiction certainly hasn't shied away from portraying malevolent AI.
Yeah, the cultural impact of those fictional portrayals is, it's undeniable. However, it's really important to distinguish between hypothetical future scenarios and the current reality of AI capabilities.
Okay.
While we should certainly be mindful of potential long-term risks, our immediate focus probably needs to be on the ethical development and responsible deployment of the AI we have now.
Right. And it's not just relegated to fiction, is it? We saw in that Saudi Arabian study, a significant percentage of participants expressed really profound fears related to AI fear of death, anxiety about meaninglessness.
Yeah, that was striking.
That suggests these anxieties aren't just about practical concerns. They tap into something much deeper.
Indeed. Those findings really highlight that our anxieties about AI can connect with fundamental human questions about our existence, our place in the universe, especially when we introduce something as potentially transformative as artificial intelligence.
Okay, moving to more immediate and maybe tangible concerns. There's a lot of worry around the lack of transparency in AI, that black box problem.
Explainability.
It's hard to trust how AI arrives at decisions when you can't really understand the reasoning behind it.
That opacity definitely creates challenges for building trust, yeah. One expert in our materials describes it this way: the most advanced forms of AI are also the least able to explain why. Think of it like a super complex calculator where you get the answer, but you can't see the steps it took to get there. This lack of explainability can be, particularly concerning in high-stakes situations.
Exactly. It makes it difficult to identify potential errors or biases, which feeds right into those ethical concerns we hear about the fear that AI could perpetuate and even amplify existing societal biases in really important areas like hiring or lending.
This is an absolutely valid worry, as AI systems learn from the data they're trained on. If that data reflects existing biases, the AI can, unfortunately, replicate and even worsen those inequalities.
Like the example you mentioned.
Yeah, the example of AI recommending similar individuals for advancement based on past promotion patterns perfectly illustrates this. However, one analysis suggests that by making the data and algorithms more transparent, we might actually be able to identify and correct biases in AI more effectively than we currently can with human biases, which are often unconscious.
That's a really interesting point, that the very thing we fear, the black box, might also hold the key to making things fair in the long run, if we can find ways to open it up.
Potentially, yes.
Then we have worries about how AI might affect our social interactions. The fear that we might, choose to engage with AI over humans, leading to social isolation.
This anxiety touches on the core of what it means to be human, our need for connection, for empathy. Will increasingly sophisticated AI companions alter the way we relate to each other? It's a big question many people are grappling with.
And in a more practical sense, there are cybersecurity risks and the potential for misuse of AI. The idea that AI could be used to launch more sophisticated cyber attacks is definitely unsettling.
Yeah, the increasing power and accessibility of AI tools do raise legitimate concerns about their potential for malicious use. It's certainly something that security experts are actively working to address.
We can't forget the artistic and creative fields either. There's a real fear that AI's ability to generate creative content could devalue human creativity and cause job losses for artists, musicians, writers.
This brings up really fundamental questions about the nature of creativity itself and the value we place on human skill and expression. It's a debate that's actively unfolding as AI's creative capabilities evolve almost daily, it seems.
Yeah, it's moving fast. Finally, there's that slightly unsettling feeling some people get, the uncanny valley effect, when AI entities appear almost human, but not quite.
Right. That feeling of eeriness seems to tap into our sensitivity to subtle mismatches in appearance and behavior. It can create a sense of unease that makes it harder to accept certain forms of AI, particularly robots or virtual avatars.
Okay, so that's a pretty wide range of anxieties.
Yeah.
But let's shift our focus now. We've heard the fears. What is a more logical look at the current state of AI? Tell us about the likelihood of these scenarios actually playing out. Let's start with the big one, job displacement.
Well, okay, while AI will undoubtedly automate many tasks, the overwhelming consensus among experts in our sources is that it's far more likely to augment human capabilities than completely replace them.
Augment? Okay.
Yeah, many jobs require complex problem solving, creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence areas where current AI still falls significantly short. It's good at patterns, not so much at nuance or true understanding.
That's a key distinction, augmentation versus replacement. And as we touched on earlier, history offers some perspective here, right?
Definitely.
When we look at the introduction of technologies like the internet, while some jobs disappeared, entirely new industries and roles emerged. We're already seeing the rise of AI prompt engineers, for example. Who saw that coming 10 years ago?
Exactly, nobody. And one economic principle to consider is that technological advancements often lead to increased efficiency and lower costs. This can actually drive demand for new goods and services, ultimately creating new employment opportunities elsewhere. It's about the economy adapting and evolving, not just shrinking.
So while specific jobs may change, and that transition can be painful for sure, the idea of widespread permanent unemployment caused solely by AI seems less likely based on both historical trends and the current capabilities of the technology.
That seems to be the prevailing view, yes.
Okay, what about the fear of losing control to AI?
Right. The crucial thing to understand here is that the AI we have today operates under what's called narrow intelligence.
Narrow intelligence.
Yeah. It excels at specific tasks like playing chess, analyzing medical images, translating languages, but it lacks general intelligence, common sense, and crucially, consciousness. It's entirely dependent on the data and algorithms we provide. It doesn't have its own motivations or the ability to act independently in the way we see in science fiction.
So those scenarios of AI suddenly deciding to, take over the world are firmly in the realm of science fiction for now.
For now, and likely for the foreseeable future based on current trajectories.
And even with more autonomous systems, humans still design the parameters implement safeguards, and importantly, retain the ability to intervene to pull the plug if needed.
Precisely. And while the black box nature of some AI can feel like a loss of control, it's important to remember that these systems are ultimately based on code and data created by humans. The lack of explainability is a challenge for understanding and debugging, but it doesn't equate to independent will or sentience.
Got it. What about those big existential risks? Is there actually a scientific consensus on an imminent threat to humanity from AI?
Currently, no. There isn't a broad consensus on an imminent existential threat. While some researchers, philosophers, are thinking seriously about potential long-term risks as AI becomes much more advanced, superintelligence scenarios, and so on. The more immediate concerns revolve around the ethical use and unintended consequences of the AI we have now.
Like what?
Things like the spread of sophisticated misinformation, the amplification of biases in decision-making, potential misuse in warfare. These are more pressing near-term risks associated with current or near-future capabilities.
So while we absolutely need to be thoughtful and proactive about potential future risks, the immediate threats are more about how we design, deploy, and govern AI today.
Exactly. It's also worth remembering that throughout history, humanity has faced other potential existential threats, nuclear war, pandemics, climate change, and we've generally found ways to navigate them, or at least we're trying to.
That's a good point.
And there's a significant and growing amount of research dedicated specifically to AI safety. This field focuses on proactively addressing potential risks and ensuring that as AI evolves, it does so in a way that remains aligned with human values and beneficial to humanity.
Okay, that's somewhat reassuring. Now let's turn our attention back to the fear of bias in AI.
Right.
This one feels particularly relevant because we're already seeing examples, aren't we? AI systems making decisions that seem unfair or discriminatory.
It is a critical issue, no doubt. However, it's important to understand where that bias comes from. It isn't some inherent evil within the technology itself. It originates from the biases present in the data used to train these systems.
So biased data leads to biased AI.
Exactly. And also the way the algorithms are designed, both of which are fundamentally human choices, human inputs. And because it's a result of human actions, it's something we can potentially address.
So it's not that AI is inherently prejudiced, but rather that it can reflect and even amplify the prejudices that already exist in our society, sometimes at scale.
Precisely. The good news, if you can call it that, is that there are active efforts to identify and mitigate bias in AI. This includes things like using more diverse and representative data sets for training, developing algorithms that are specifically designed to be less prone to bias, establishing clear governance frameworks for AI development and deployment, and incorporating human oversight into AI decision-making processes.
So humans in the loop.
Absolutely. And interestingly, in some ways, because we can actually analyze the data and the code, unlike the often unconscious biases of individuals, we might actually have more tools, potentially, to systematically address bias in AI than we do with purely human decision making.
That's a really empowering thought, that we could potentially work to make AI fairer than humans in some respects, if we do it right.
If we're diligent and intentional about it, yes.
Now, let's delve into why we might feel so uneasy about AI on a more personal psychological level. It's not all logic, is it?
Oh, definitely not. For some people, it might tap into a general fear of new technologies, what psychologists sometimes call technophobia, or more specifically, cyberphobia.
Right.
This can be triggered by the rapid pace of change, maybe negative media portrayals we talked about, or just a feeling of being overwhelmed by something complex we don't fully understand.
And then there's that uncanny valley effect we mentioned, that kind of creepy feeling when AI gets close to looking or acting human but isn't quite there.
Yeah, that eeriness seems to be rooted deep, maybe in our evolutionary instincts to detect something that's almost familiar, but also subtly wrong or deceptive. It can create a sense of distrust or discomfort that's hard to shake.
Even the fear of job displacement has a significant psychological impact, doesn't it? Beyond just the financial implications. Our work is often so tied to our sense of identity and purpose.
Absolutely. The prospect of losing one's livelihood, the thing you've trained for and maybe define yourself by, can lead to significant anxiety, stress, and a diminished sense of self-worth. It hits hard. Similarly, feeling like we're losing control to AI, whether it's in our jobs or personal lives, can be deeply disempowering and erode our sense of autonomy.
So understanding these psychological roots is really key. What are some ways we can actually address these underlying anxieties beyond just the logical arguments?
Well, for general technophobia, sometimes gradual exposure to AI in a safe and controlled environment can be helpful, like using AI tools for simple, non-critical tasks first.
Okay.
Educational initiatives that demystify the technology and, importantly, highlight its potential benefits alongside the risks can also reduce fear. Knowledge reduces the unknown.
Right. And for the anxiety around job displacement.
Fostering a mindset of continuous learning and adaptability is crucial. We need to encourage and support reskilling and upskilling, emphasizing how AI can augment our skills and create new opportunities rather than just focusing on the replacement narrative is also really important for morale and perspective. Employers have a big role here too in communicating openly.
What about that uncanny valley? Are there design strategies that can help avoid that feeling of discomfort?
Yes, designers are very aware of this. They can intentionally create AI with more stylized, clearly non-human features, think like WALL-E, not something trying too hard to be human. Or conversely, they can strive for such a high degree of realism that the AI becomes virtually indistinguishable from a human, potentially bypassing the valley. Also, simply being transparent about whether you're interacting with an AI or a human helps manage expectations and avoid triggering that uncanny feeling. Clear labeling is key.
And for that fear of losing control, it sounds like transparency about how AI works, even if it's simplified, coupled with clear opportunities for human oversight and intervention, can really help restore a sense of agency.
Exactly. Even encouraging people to experiment and, play with AI in low stakes environments can make it feel less threatening and more like a tool.
That makes sense. Familiarity can often breed understanding and reduce anxiety. Now, when we look back at how society has responded to other major technological shifts throughout history, are there any lessons we can draw for how we're reacting to AI right now?
Oh, absolutely. The historical parallels are quite striking. When you consider the printing press, electricity, the automobile, the internet, each one was met with its own set of fears and considerable resistance initially.
Right. You mentioned the Luddites famously protesting against new textile machinery.
Exactly. And even the telegraph raised significant worries about privacy, the idea that private messages could be intercepted.
I hadn't thought of that one.
And the introduction of cars, as we said, was initially met with widespread concerns about safety, noise, pollution, and the displacement of traditional transportation methods like horses and buggies. Radio and television were also heavily criticized early on for their potential negative social impacts, dumbing down society, things like that.
But ultimately, these technologies became integrated into our lives, didn't they? And in many ways, they significantly improved our quality of life, despite the initial disruption.
They did. Increased familiarity, a better understanding of their actual benefits over time, and importantly, the development of societal norms, regulations, and safety standards all played a crucial role in overcoming those initial fears and integrating the tech responsibly.
So what are the lessons for AI from that?
Well, there are clear parallels. Initial resistance and anxiety seem almost universal with transformative tech. Fears about job displacement are a recurring theme, but history suggests new, often unanticipated jobs tend to emerge. Education and open, honest communication are consistently crucial for building acceptance, and actively highlighting the positive ways the technology can be used is essential for shifting public perception beyond just the risks.
So while AI might feel completely unprecedented and revolutionary, the human response to this kind of technological change seems to follow a fairly consistent pattern throughout history.
It really does seem that way.
Okay, now let's talk about building trust in AI. It feels like that's a cornerstone of moving past these fears and actually embracing the potential benefits.
It absolutely is. But trust in AI is a bit different from how we trust other people, isn't it? AI systems don't have consciousness, emotions, personal histories, or the same kind of moral responsibility.
Right, you can't really betrayal by AI in the same way you can by a person.
Exactly. Our trust in AI is more about its reliability. Will it do what it's supposed to do consistently? Its safety, will it operate without causing harm? And its alignment with our values, does it operate in ways we consider fair and ethical?
And that lack of transparency, the black box problem we talked about earlier, can really erode that kind of trust, right? If we don't understand how an AI system is making decisions, especially important ones, it's hard to feel confident in its outcomes.
Precisely. It breeds suspicion. So what are some concrete steps we can take or are being taken to build that trust?
Well, it sounds like designing AI with a human-centered approach is absolutely key. Focusing on how AI can genuinely help people, augment their abilities, and improve their lives, rather than just optimizing for efficiency at all costs.
Absolutely. And transparent communication is also vital, as we've touched on. Clearly explaining the purpose of an AI system, how it works, even in simplified, understandable terms, what data it uses, its known limitations, and even being open and honest about when it makes mistakes. That kind of openness can build confidence over time.
Mistakes are going to happen, so owning them is important.
Crucial. And it's not just about communication after the fact, it's also about the design process itself. Building AI systems that are demonstrably reliable, fair, secure, and accountable, giving users a genuine sense of control over how they interact with AI, including clear fallback mechanisms or ways to appeal decisions. Those are all critical elements in fostering trust.
Those principles of trustworthy AI transparency, reliability, fairness, accountability, security, user control seem fundamental.
They are. And it's important to remember that addressing fears and building trust isn't a one-time fix. It requires ongoing education, open dialogue, and a willingness to adapt regulations and practices as the technology evolves and as we learn more about its societal impacts.
Absolutely. Initiatives to improve AI literacy, just helping people understand the basics of how AI works, what it can and can't do, and its potential applications, seems so important right now.
Yes, definitely. From integrating AI education into school curricula K-12 and higher ed to public awareness campaigns, the more people understand about AI, even at a basic level, the less mysterious and potentially frightening it will seem.
And effective communication also means using clear, accessible language, avoiding overly technical jargon, and proactively addressing potential concerns rather than waiting for problems to arise.
Clear labeling too, like we mentioned. Is this content AI generated? Are you talking to a bot? That kind of clarity helps.
Because ultimately we need to look beyond just the fears, as valid as some may be, and recognize the incredibly positive potential of AI across so many different fields. We need a balanced view.
Exactly. Think about healthcare, for instance. AI is already helping doctors with faster and more accurate diagnoses from medical images, developing personalized treatment plans based on genetic data, accelerating the discovery of new drugs. The potential to improve patient outcomes is immense.
Huge. And in education.
In education, AI can personalize learning experiences for individual students, provide immediate feedback on assignments, automate grading for teachers, freeing them up for more direct interaction, and even make complex concepts more accessible through interactive simulations.
And across industries like manufacturing, AI is driving significant gains in efficiency, improving quality control through automated inspection, enabling predictive maintenance to prevent equipment failures, enhancing worker safety, and optimizing complex supply chains.
Don't forget finance either. AI is becoming indispensable for detecting fraudulent transactions in real time, assessing credit risk more accurately, automating routine tasks, providing personalized financial advice through robo-advisors, and increasing overall operational efficiency. The potential for beneficial impact is truly vast and touches almost every sector.
So as we conclude this deep dive into the public fears surrounding artificial intelligence, it's clear that these anxieties are multifaceted, they're widespread, and frankly, understandable. They touch on really fundamental concerns about our jobs, our autonomy, our privacy, and even the future of humanity.
But as we've explored, there's also a range of perspectives that offer a more nuanced understanding. We've looked at the logical limitations of current AI. It's not magic, it's math and data. We've considered the psychological roots of our apprehension, which are often quite deep-seated.
Yeah, and we've drawn parallels with historical technological transformations, which shows us we've kind of been here before, in a way. And importantly, we've discussed the crucial steps we can take and are starting to take to build trust through transparency, ethical development practices, robust governance, and widespread education.
And it's just vital to keep in mind that the story of AI isn't just about potential risks and anxieties. It's also a story of immense potential benefits that could genuinely help us address some of humanity's biggest challenges, from disease to climate change to resource management.
So for you, the listener, perhaps consider this. How can understanding this historical cycle of technological anxiety, coupled with a clearer, more balanced understanding of both the limitations and the potential of AI, empower you to approach this technology not with blind faith, perhaps, but with a sense of cautious optimism?
Maybe reflecting on how previous technological revolutions, despite initial fears, ultimately shaped society often for the better, though not without challenges, can offer some valuable perspective on the changes we're facing now. It's about navigating the change thoughtfully.
And we encourage you to continue exploring the ongoing discussions around AI, ethics, safety, regulation, and the many ways this technology is already shaping and will continue to shape our world. Stay informed, stay engaged.
Well said.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll catch you next time.